Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, presented by Zwift, the online cycling platform that makes training fun. We're here for stage 3 of the Giro d'Italia, the first proper bunch sprint stage. You've got Cav here, MVP, or would they go for Maresco, Alpecin, MVP in Malia, Damar, Ewan, Gaviria, Nizzolo, Bauhaus, who's won at Tirreno this year, a whole host of sprinters, no Jakobsen or Merlier. It's from Kapos Var to Balaton Fured, a lake southwest, about 100k southwest of Budapest. And there's like a 1500 meter, 3% roller about 13k's from the finish, which would offer up some KOM points. But otherwise, there shouldn't have been a problem for any of the sprinters, and it wasn't in the run into this finish. Wide roads, straight roads, big trains set up, and just a pure sprint stage before the transition day over to Sicily for stage 4 on Tuesday. But Benji, we saw once again Androni in the break, trying to get in there, but no Bardiani. What is going on with Bardiani and your team YOLO in the break? I expected a whole host of the Pro Conti Italian teams in there.
I kind of expected the same, but we know that Androni was in the breakaway, or drone hopper in the first one already with 2 riders, Baez and Tagliani. Those 2 were in the breakaway again today because, last time they thought, let's get some kilometers in because there's a classification existing that just counts the total amount of kilometers that each rider gets into the breakaway and gives an extra prize to the winner of that classification. And it looks like drone hopper and Savio, the manager of that team, really wants that classification because the same riders were in the break again together with Samuele Rivi from Aiolo, but Bardiani not to be seen. And I thought there was some drama going on in the Italian press, but I think Luca Scinto wasn't the Vini Zabu DS last year or 2 years ago before that team folded. He started complaining that Bardiani was not in the breakaway or something.
Well, yeah, you normally expect them to battle it out in the exposure break. We were really surprised on stage 1, 2 Androni riders just walk off the front out of neutral. I'm like, where are the other teams? Apparently, I think Bardiani are not getting in breaks unless there's a World Tour team in the break. They're not doing exposure breaks. But I would say with their team, I get that for other teams, like Leonard Kamner shouldn't go in exposure breakaways because he can win real breakaways, but exposure might be the best thing those guys can get in flat sprint stages, Bardiani. And I can't say that all their riders need to hold back for maybe some missed medium mountain stages, which we do have in the first week. So, yeah, interesting to see. There's always some internal inter-Nissan strife between the Pro Conti teams at these races. We saw it, I don't know, was it Catalonia or what Spanish race? Basque Country, when the Pro Conti Spanish teams turned upon each other. Sometimes there's stuff like that, the race within the race in the Giro as well. But before we get into the main action of this stage, which was in the last 13Ks, mention our show partner, Zwift. Speaking of MVP for this stage, or Cavendish, Zwift is the online cycling platform of choice for them and for Benji and myself as well. There's a reason we could make it over to Budapest. So if you want to have an online cycling platform to help you get fitter, have more fun on the bike, Zwift is the choice for you. It has real world and fantasy locations to ride in, hundreds of workouts on demand, training plans, and you can drop in with pace partners or create your own meetup with friends on Zwift to keep your training fun and consistent. Certainly helped me and Benji over the last few months. So if you haven't given it a go, head to Zwift.com down below for a free 7-day trial. But the action really kicked off. Benji Break got caught with your man, Pascal Encorn, trying to steal a march. Speaking of a race within a race, the KOM battle between 2 sort of lead-out men, not even sprinters. Kind of like it was just funny to see.
Yes, certainly. We knew that at the time trial that just happened. It was a battle between Zabel, also Einkorn, and some other riders that tried to just go very slow in the initial part and hammered to climb in that KOM in that time trial to make sure they got the KOM jersey. Zabel won that, and now I think revenge was on the table for Einkorn and each ride, but Rick Zabel was on the wheel, and that's an issue because if Einkorn takes first at the KOM points here, Zabel takes second, they're on same points, and on paper that means that Rick Zabel is first in KOM still, and they ended up having a bit of a situation with the 2 of them ahead of the peloton. Einkorn went first, tried to keep him behind him, but eventually Zabel went to the wheel, Zabel came past, and Then it went to the last 200 meters towards that sprint, and Eenkhoorn kicked past Zabel again to take the points. But hey, Zabel still in the lead of the KOM jersey, so it didn't move that much. I think Eenkhoorn hoped that Zabel would not be sprinting for the KOM jersey, but I guess that's logical that he defends his jersey there. But Eenkhoorn kept going, and I thought, why not, eh? There's a team in there, Jumbo, with some riders that could go for GC, but they're willing to play their cards a bit rough. They're willing to go for some stuff, and Eenkhoorn tried, but it was pretty clear very soon that this attack would not go anywhere, and the teams that wanted to get their sprinters to the front started getting their sprinters to the front. Then it was intriguing because we had large trains forming with about 5 to 4K to go, right?
Yeah, like Israel have been setting up very, very early for years, a couple of years now, and it didn't work out once again today with Dowsett he was doing his job, but there was no one behind him. It was just Nitzola, and I was like, where? And it's almost like Zabel spent his bickies, the last lead-up man for Giacomo Nitzola in that KOM battle, so that didn't help Nitzola, I don't think. Ewan as well. They had 3 riders, Kluge, Schwarzman, Selig, for Ewan, who was banged up after his crash on stage 1. Quickstep were doing what they normally do. They were waiting. They were in the draft. They had 3 guys plus Cav, Ballerini, Van Leeuwenberger, and Merku. And Alpecin had like 8 riders. So, yeah, Alpecin had a very, very attractive looking train set up on the left-hand side, but it actually wasn't that potent and turned into a complete shambles at the end of this race. FDJ put Demar in very, very, very good position. I think they got to be happy with how he performed today and how their train performed with the old guard of Konovalovos, Guarnieri, and Zinkeldam. But yeah, it turned into Ewan he had Kluger in front of him, I don't know, 2Ks to go, maybe 15. He's third last man, came with him from Orica, and I was like, Benji, he's got to bring him forward, because if he didn't, they're in the middle of the pack on the left-hand side. They're not even getting a good draft like Quickstep were. If you don't come forward at that point with your train, you will get pinched. And like, what's the solution for you in there? Does he have to switch off onto another train? Does he have no choice? He just has to follow Kluger and hope he can bring him forward.
Well, I'd argue that he's shown the last few years that he sometimes trusts going alone more than following his train. And here he tried to follow the train and it doesn't get him anywhere. Like you said, Kluge didn't go forward and he didn't even, he got past one Groupama rider, I think, that was on the right of him. And then he was like, okay, elbow out, someone else needs to take over. And then the second rider doesn't really have that speed either to move past all the trains that are ahead of them because, we said it, the trains were forming. That Alpecin train on the left with 7 riders. Those riders just came up while Lotto had been trying in the middle to try and move up, while that train of Alpecin is fresh and is able to move forward. And in the meanwhile, Quickstep is not to be seen at the front, is hidden behind, but you know that that's their strategy. Going late, that's a difference between Quickstep and Lotto as well. Lotto, they were in the middle. And
just
because
trying to
of
hold
that,
position. They're just holding position, but not doing anything. And then when they're trying to move up, Kluger's done.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the comparison with Quickstep, who stays behind people while holding that position and does saves energy to try and move fast in the last 2 kilometers. I think that's the difference between those 2 teams in the setup of their train. Meanwhile, you've spoken about it, Israel, 1 rider left for the sprinter on the right side of the road. Then the team of DSM bails them out. I think you mentioned that. While DSM moved forward past that lead out of Israel. But in the end, it was really, first of all, Alpecin that kept moving forward. Note, Van der Poel was leading out Maresco on this stage. We'll talk about that after the stage recap has finished. But then the team of the day when it comes to the lead out came forward.
Yeah, Intermarché tried for Biniam, and he then gets boxed in. He's behind Gaviri being led up by Rachese, but they're all just subject to Ballerini's wishes on Quickstep, who surges forward. This is what they do. They're sitting in behind. Ballerini hits it really hard in, I don't know, over a K to go. They've got Van Leeuwenberger, I think, second last, I'm guessing, and then Merku last. It wasn't perfect for Quickstep. Ballerini did a good job, moved them forward, destroyed the Alpecin train. They had too many riders and weren't using them quickly enough. They were just they had 6 riders, but in the end, a lot of them actually couldn't pull effectively, and Mareshko got squeezed off Van der Poel's wheel or couldn't hold his wheel. Van Leeuwenhoek actually didn't pull that long, and Merku was then at 700 holding the front position, waiting, trying not to go too early with Cav in the wheel, and he can't go at 700. He normally goes at 550 to sometimes even in the Tour, he went at 450 or later. And so Cavendish gets launched, and he goes with like 300 meters to go. Such an early sprint from Cavendish. He opened it up. He had Demar and Gaviria on his wheel, and Biniam was boxed in on behind Gaviria, and then Demar on his right-hand side couldn't get out. It was like what happened to Cav on the Champs-Élysées stage last year when Wout van Aert won, and Demar wasn't in the draft of Cav perfectly. He's way bigger than Cav anyway. Cav's in that super aero position. Gaviria's got no top-end speed anymore anyway, and so he's actually doing an effective job for Cavendish, blocking up the left-hand barrier without actually ever threatening to beat Cavendish. And Demars just can't get out of the wheel of Cav, or didn't. He was sitting in the draft and then, just didn't have that top end, and it turned into a drag race. It reminded me a lot of the UAE Tour stage where Philipsen just beat Cavendish, where Cav went really early, or maybe Cav won, I can't remember. They had some good battles there, but Cavendish won. No one could come out of his wheel, and I think it wasn't even a perfect lead out. I think if he had a perfect one, dropped off at 200 or 150, or if he was in Gaviria or Demar's position, he wins this by 3-4 bike lengths. And the LRCP Giro coverage is supported by GCN Plus. Whilst today was a sprint stage, the next stage on Tuesday up Mount Etna is the first GC action. It's not too late to get a GCN Plus subscription where you can watch the entirety of the race live, ad-free, and on demand. Should you wish, GCN Plus have live rights worldwide, excluding New Zealand. And that stage 4, as I said, first big GC opportunity. I think some riders will lose time. It's definitely one to tune into live, that mountaintop finish, or GCN Plus have the full stage replays afterwards. All LRCP listeners from the US, UK, Australia, Canada, and Germany can get 25% off an annual GCN Plus subscription by heading to gcn.eu/LRCP, which is in the description down below. Question is, Benji, where's Caleb Ewan?
That's a very good question. He was, first of all, nowhere to be seen in the final stretch, and it looked like, for when you saw him in the back, it looked like he had already given up. So it's clear that he wasn't like thinking, "Oh, I need to maximize my points for Ciclamino here." He was not in a competitive position to start a sprint, and it resulted in him not winning the stage. Thus, he wasn't really, he wasn't really going for the last 2 points there. But I want to bring up some other things as well. I want to go on a bit of a rant. It's my rant time. You can get your coffee this time around. I can't get over the fact that Mareshko is selected for this squad for Alpecin. And I've spoken about it before, and I'm going to speak about it again. Everything Mareshko can achieve in a sprint here, with Van der Poel as lead out or without Van der Poel as lead out, Van der Poel can do alone in the first place. Van der Poel has difficulties winning these bunch sprints, but so has Mareshko. And I believe that Van der Poel would easily have top 5 today if he rode for himself. Mareshko top 5 with Van der Poel as lead out, even though the lead out situation did not go as planned at all, and clearly was not a perfect lead out from Van der Poel either. Like, the entire combination they have the option of sending someone else in the spot of Mareshko to this Grand Tour, and therefore having chances in different stage. Let's say Jay Vine, for example, your homeboy. Like, if he's put in this team, he's an option to get a stage win somewhere, in a mountain stage and a breakaway somewhere. And now they're taking that away and putting an extra sprinter in that can do exactly what Van der Poel can already achieve alone in sprints. Yeah, people will say, Van der Poel hasn't won a World Tour mass sprint yet before. The UAE Tour mass sprint that he won wasn't necessarily a mass sprint. It was an echelon stage. It was a smaller group. But let's be honest, if Mareshko is able to win a sprint in this Giro, Van der Poel can also win a mass sprint in the Giro. He just needs to get it right once. And I can't get over that. It's I hate it.
Well, I think, first of all, MVDP probably, I don't think he wants the Ciclamino jersey. I think he's going to be happy to give away, or he'll lose the Maglia Rosa on stage 4 on Mount Etna, and then he's free pretty much to leave the Giro when he wants. It's much more difficult to leave the Giro when you're wearing one of the jerseys, and he would be in the Ciclamino jersey if he'd contested this sprint after the points he accumulated on stage 1. after Mount Etna. So I'm not sure he wants Chiclamino. If he did, then he should be going for these sprints himself. But yeah, you're right. Like he's not a good lead out man, MVDP. He's really surgy. It's not doesn't seem to be something that comes naturally to him. And especially as a last man, I particularly think he's not a great lead out man. But this is what Alpecin did last year when Merlier was faster than Philipsen at the Tour de France. Philipsen is sort of gone a different level now, but they won the first sprint stage with Merlier, and then were like, well, Merlier can lead out Philipsen. Maybe it's a team morale thing, a camaraderie thing, showing faith in Mareshko, but I think showing faith in Philipsen is more of a long-term play with a guy with really high upside versus Mareshko's like been just a pro Conti sprinter, and they signed him off Vini Zabu last year, and I thought they pretty much signed him to go to like Antalya sprints and Saudi Tour sprints just so that Merlier and Philipsen didn't have to go to those races. So MVP throwing a chance at a Giro top 3 in a stage, yeah, I agree. For Mareshko, it's like, particularly because he's still in the mix, right? Like, is it even less, like, is what is MVP did today, like, safer than just contesting the sprint?
I don't think so. I think it's just as dangerous. He was literally doing a lead out until like 200 meters to go. He was spending a lot of
energy.
energy.
He was boxing on.
Yeah, exactly. And he kind of kept going and he looked behind. Where's Mareshko? Like, the aspect to it as well is Van der Poel is doing that lead out. And if Merku is in Van der Poel's situation, he would be aware of Mareshko not being in his wheel. And I feel like Van der Poel was not aware that Mareshko had lost his wheel at any point until he looked back, which was way too late.
Yeah, and like he's still fighting. He's literally throwing elbows, fighting Gaviria for Richese's wheel. He even pinched Richese's wheel off Gaviria. So it's like, if you've done that, like, there's no way you'll have your teammate on your wheel if you're doing stuff like that. So I even think he was going for the sprint himself in times. But anyway, I should do the top 10. Cavendish wins the stage ahead of Demar in just dominant fashion, given the position he was in, launching so early. Gaviria third, still lacking a bit of that top end. Biniam boxed in fourth, Mareshko fifth, Edward Turns sprinting for Trek sixth, Consoni seventh, Ewan eighth, Dainese ninth, Bauhaus 10th, and Nizzolo 11th. DSM had Boll in 13th, so I don't know what they're doing with Dainese and Boll, whether they're both sprinting, but yeah, I don't know what's happening there. And yeah, Ewan disappointing. I mean, I've said it a few times now, like, there's one thing worse than having a bad lead out and not trusting it. It's if you have a bad lead out and you trust it and then it puts you nowhere, he had no chance to win this stage. And I've been probably guilty of, oh, well, Ewan's the fastest. But like, if you can't get to the finish in competitive position at a decent rate and, strike rate, that's irrelevant. And it's almost like it's more often than not now he's not put in bad position. It's almost the rarity when, he's fifth wheel now. A pure sprint. The uphill one's different. So what do you think they do going forward? Do they just try and improve on this and get the lead out right, or does Ewan freelance, or what?
I try it out with a bit of a piloting thing where he has one pilot that brings him into a position and he tries from that at least once. If that works better or not, they can see from that forward. But I think this method has shown enough that it's very rare that it brings Ewan into a position that matters and that gets him somewhere. And they're able to do this tactic in races where Merku isn't there, where the terrain of Quickstep isn't there, like that Saudi Tour thing. They were able to have a good lead out in, I think, stage 1 or 2 with the Beist, and then Ewan was able to clean it up that stage. But when we look at this race, there's Alpecin trying with all their riders, with 7 riders. We have Quickstep with loads of riders trying. There's so many teams trying that they don't have it that easily to get Ewan into a position. And because of that, it seems like the harder the races are, the more competitive the sprints are when it comes to the lead out, the less likely they are to get Ewan in the right position. So I try with a pilot, something like that. But I also want to mention, when it comes to the Quickstep terrain, Mauro Schmidt was apparently supposed to be the man that did the early job just before Ballerini, and I think Cavendish mentioned that in his post-race interview, and perhaps that's the reason that we saw that Cavendish was a bit early into a position where he had to go early.
Yeah, I guess, but they just waited with Ballerini. I'd say more the second last man didn't go long enough, but then there's Alpecin moving up on the left. I don't know. For Ewan, you're right, but they don't have Du Bois here, so who's the pilot? I think Zelig is the best option to do that. because Du Bois crashed out or is injured, and that's why it's hard. They're kind of scrambling to get the train working in one of the big A targets for him. Fortunately, no GC contenders, no crashes, anything like that. Ineos brought Carapaz into a safe position with Narvaez. I think they did really well. So any last thoughts from this sprint stage, Benji?
I think I want to give some homework to the LRCP listeners. I want to rant on about the fact that the competitivity award of this bloody race is decided by a Twitter poll on the Giro d'Italia Twitter, which makes zero sense because then it's not about competitivity, it's a popularity contest. And for the last 2 days, Mathieu Van der Poel was leading it, and I guess I dipped my hand into the cookie jar and subtly quote tweeted it, voting for someone else. And therefore, we had Kemna and Zabel winning, and I'd like to ask the LRCP listeners, let's vote for the friendly Pascal Eenkhoorn, the man that in the Tour of Britain last year gave his beat on to that kid by the side of the road. Let's reward that guy. And to be honest, I think what Eenkhoorn did today gives more exposure than all those 3 riders in the breakaway. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, because if you looked at the profile, you shouldn't have been watching any earlier than like 15 Ks to go, which we weren't. Nothing really happened at all. Bit of a slow stage. The other news was Jan Tratnik, unfortunately, and I'm not surprised by this. He was seen doing the time trial yesterday. He crashed on stage 1 and couldn't even hold the bars on the pavé with his hand. That's going to be even harder on a road bike. Didn't finish this stage or didn't start, so he's out of the Giro. That's a real shame. Former Giro stage winner in 2020 and just a huge domestique for Bahrain in all terrain, really, and second on Zoncolan last year. No one really lost time today. And I know I went on that big rant at Romandy about, will people lose time? Now that MVD, and let's talk about this, the next stage, they're going to travel down to Sicily, the long trip from Hungary to Sicily. So tomorrow there's no stage, and then the next stage is from Avola to Etna. 23 Ks, 5.9% mountaintop finish, although it's a little bit steeper than the 5.9% in the last 15 kilometers. It's pretty much, there's like a 8K, 4.5% climb in the first half where a break will form or will have formed by then, and then flat. So it's pretty much just a flat and then mountaintop finish, the first one of the Giro. I think this has to be breakaway. MVDP will lose Malia, so Alpecin really shouldn't be interested in hard pacing a break. And then it's a 3-week race. I think we're going to see someone like Jan Palance of 2017, but the version of him now go into the Maglia Rosa. I think Kemna wins this stage and takes the Maglia Rosa. He didn't lose time today, and I thought, was that stupid? But I'm like, should the GC contenders, like if you were Bike Exchange, would you prevent Leonard Kemna getting in the break and taking 3-4 minutes?
No, not necessarily, to be honest. Kemna's a rider that could actually be better GC wise than you would expect, but I do think that letting the breakaway win is still a good situation for any GC rider in this race. And I'm gonna point another rider out there. I don't know if he had some bad legs or something, but he's lost 8 minutes 37 so far in this race, Alessandro De Marchi, and I think that's on purpose because otherwise you're not that far. I don't think he crashed in this race. Could be wrong, but I actually at least didn't see it. So I see some opportunities there. For example, that the Marquis rider being in the breakaway seems like a thing that is destined to happen tomorrow. And when it comes to other riders, I don't know, it's difficult, Fortunato, the dude from Aiolo, the man lost 2 minutes in GC in the first 2 stages. He was supposed to go for top 10 based on the rumors I heard. He should just go for stages and KOM at this point. Give up on the top 10. I like Fortunato a lot, but nah, man. KOM jersey, awesome.
I mean, he can try and get in the break. I'm not sure people will care that much because, he's going to lose so much time. He'll lose about 10 minutes on the final TT. Other riders who won a Giro stage last year from a break, Joe Dombrowski, DeMarchi, as Benji mentioned, he went into the Maglia Rosa last year. Wouldn't be surprised to see him in the break. Simon Carr, Merwai Kudus for EF. Gijs Leemreizer for Jumbo. Jumbo seem to be sort of trying different things in this race, not just wholly trying to go for GC. They're trying to achieve other objectives. Antonio Pedrero, Chris Hamilton, although DSM seem to be kind of locked down for Roman Bardet. Mollema, I think people will respect him too much. I don't think they'd be happy with him in the break, like a Kemna. Kemna will lose so much time in the future. I think they will if he gets in, they won't be too bothered. So I think it'll be a break. I would be very surprised if I just don't see with Simon Yates' history, with Bike Exchange, with how he looks. Like, I don't think you want to carry the Malia all the way. Like, Kemna's a good one because he might keep it for quite a while too. Like, he won't just lose it on the first roller, and then you can take it back when you want to make a difference later in the race. So, yeah, I think it's break. But if it's not, what's in it? Like, which team from the GC guys should pace Benji?
The thing is, like, when we look at 2020, I think the Etna stage, Almeida was the one having somewhat of a bad situation. But on paper, if you look at this parkour, you'd say, oh, it's a stage where UAE should control and Almeida should just have a group sprint for him. But if it's a similar situation to 2020, then that's not exactly a likable situation for him. So I think we don't have like a clear set of like, oh, this team or this team is intrigued by this. I do think that Ineos will likely try and control, and they also trust Carapaz's punch if it comes down to it. But I don't think they'll control it for winning the stage itself.
No. So yeah, Leonard Kamner, Demarchi, Van Herke, James Knox, those sort of riders, expect to see them in the breakaway. I'm going with Kamner, and hopefully there is a GC battle behind. That's when it's perfect, when we got break action for the stage winner, and then also a big GC battle. I think someone will lose time on Etna. It's long. I think someone, will struggle, and they'll be like, wow, how they lost 30, 40 seconds on this stage. And I wonder who that will be. As Benji said, Almeida struggled earlier on this climb in previous years. Yates, you never know. It should really suit Almeida, like when I look at it, but it's long, 23 Ks at 6%. So we're looking forward to that. Tomorrow we don't have a rest day recap, but we have a Q&A dropping, which, we responded to questions. It's a really good episode. But yeah, there was no need to do a full rest day recap for the 3 stages we've had here in Hungary. That's tomorrow. Make sure you check it out, as well as then we'll resume our stage 4 recap coverage the next day on Tuesday. Thanks for your support while we've been here in Budapest, which has been a great experience for the both of us. Thanks to Zwift for making it possible for us to come here. Benji's got an early flight tomorrow morning. We've got a more palatable time. And yeah, we'll see you with the Q&A episode tomorrow. Until then, ciao.